Okay, welcome. Good evening. I think we're live. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for dropping by. Today is Thursday, the 17th of December, 2020. Number of new COVID cases in Malaysia today, 1,220. Last last Thursday, we actually had the highest on record, which was at least 1,000 more. So 55% of those cases are from the Klang Valley. All right, so everyone stay safe, social distance, stay indoors if you can. Right. Okay, welcome everyone who's just joining us. Hello to KP Chin. Hi Alexander. Hi Carolyn. Hi Yuan Tong. Welcome. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about. Oops, sorry. Let me find my. Yeah. So okay. So today, all right. Just doing a mic test. Right. Test one. Test two. For those of you in the audience, please just let me know if the mic's working and that you can hear me well. Thank you. So while you're here with us, feel free to, feel free to comment on the section below. Right. Feel free to like. Feel free to subscribe. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please click on the bell icon. Right. Choose subscribe. Click on the bell icon and choose all. Right. Like, subscribe, and then bell icon. Choose all, so that each time we go live, you will be notified. If you're on Facebook or if you're joining us on Twitch, please follow us. Right. Okay. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the Sony PlayStation. So if you have friends who might be interested, or gamer friends or gamers yourselves, um, feel free to tag your friends, tag your family who are also gamers. Right. They may appreciate tonight's talk. All right, because tonight we're going to talk about, it's all about gaming. Okay, so a few announcements. Right. Hey, JP Low. Hi Kente. Thanks for joining. Okay, so for all you Bitcoiners out there and all you crypto investors, today Bitcoin hit a new all-time high. In fact, it hit three or four new all-time highs. Right. So last night it broke the 20K mark, and then I woke up this morning, it was at 21,000, and throughout I think a little bit later in the afternoon it got to 22,000. And then after that, it hit a high of 23.8 thousand. So right now, I think it's hovering at about 22.6 or something. So all time high, right? There's a new all time high for Bitcoin. What a crazy day! And for all you hodlers out there who have been able to lucky enough to buy some and kept it and never sold it and kept the faith, congratulations to you. Okay, so Bitcoin actually, in the last 20, so last week we spoke, right? We had Dino on the show and we spoke about Bitcoin as well. Last week, Bitcoin's price was at about 18,200. Right, so what a difference it's been, right? Uh, Today, so in the last 24 hours, Bitcoin has actually gone up 15%. Right, Ethereum has gone up to $660 or thereabouts. Right, so that so Ether is up 11%. Litecoin is up to $100, and Litecoin has gone up 25% in the last 24 hours. 25%, guys. Yeah, so kudos to all of you who have some. Congratulations, you guys must be happy. It's a happy day in crypto land today. Okay. As I said last week, Dino was with us, and we talked about Bitcoin. We looked at the on-chain activities, and we did some on-chain analysis, right, on Bitcoin, on Ether. I think we also looked at Ren. One announcement. So this show tonight, it will be the last future proof for 2020. After this, we will be just taking it easy and resting a little bit, and we will be back in 2021. Right. So stay tuned. And so this is the last show for 2021. For 2020, right? So, but we'll be back in 2021. Okay, so tonight it's all about gaming. So I am going to share my screen and let's talk gaming. I'm going to share my screen. There you go. Tab. And we go to this one and share. Okay. Alrighty, now the present. Okay, so everybody can see this. Yes, good. All right. So, how many of you actually tried to buy the PS5 when it was launched? I heard in Malaysia it was just sold out, right? Within I think less than half an hour sold out. Right? It was very difficult to get one. Yeah, it was tough. I didn't try, but yeah. Okay, so let's start with the disclaimer. So anything that's discussed tonight is, it's for discussion and educational and informational purposes only, right? This is some research that we've done, and we're just happy to share this research with everyone. And this is not a call to action. This is not for you to buy, sell, or hold any of the shares that may or may not be listed, right? So this is just me talking about gaming, right? The gaming trends, the gaming industry. As usual on Future Proof, what we talk about is about how to future proof yourself, how to future proof your investments, and also how to invest into the future, right? Invest in the future. So yeah, welcome those of you who are just joining us, right? Feel free to tag your friends, tag your family. All right. Okay, so PS5, PlayStation 5 beats the launch sales records. Okay, so now the last time when the PlayStation 4 was launched, within the first 2 weeks, I think, 2.1 million units were sold. Sony has actually announced that more than 2.1 million units were sold in 2 weeks, right? And that's the highest launch month in terms of units and dollars sales of the gaming consoles in the US. So what was also very interesting is you had 20 million bot attacks. Well, when I say bot attacks, I mean scalpers, right? Scalping bots. Now, for those of you who don't know what scalping is, you hear a lot about this if you go to football games or whatever. Scalping is when a person knows that it's going to be a sellout. They buy all the tickets and then they sell it to you for a profit, right? So that's scalping. And then now with the internet, they get bots to do the scalping, and these people can actually make a lot of money by scalping. So they will buy up all the stock that's available, and then they will sell it right at a much higher price. So you've seen on social media that there've been people who aren't very happy that they couldn't get their hands on it, and they have to wait a few more months. And some were, and some were not willing to pay the scalpers the extra money for the PlayStation, right? Depending on how desperate they were. Right. Okay, so will there be a PlayStation 6? Now, the last time, and let me go back to this. The last time PlayStation 4 was launched, I believe that might have been back in 2000 and correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 7 years ago, 2013. Right. So correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah. So the PlayStation 4 has been out for 7 years. So question is, will there be a PlayStation 6? Right. Now, according to Jim Ryan, the CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and this is quoted verbatim, right? The truth is, I don't know, and nobody does know. So he's saying he doesn't know if there will be a PlayStation 6. Now, why are we asking this question, right? Okay, so let's look at the new PlayStation. I mean, it looks really cool, right? Like it's even the controller is so futuristic and so cool. So one of the two PlayStation 5 variants comes without a disk drive, right? So on that device, games will be downloaded and then they'll be updated via the cloud, right? As with many things these days, right? You can have a Gmail account and you can use your Google Docs, you can use Google Sheets, you can use Google Slides, right? Instead of using, Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, because everything is done on the cloud. So going onto the cloud, being cloud native is actually quite a natural progression. Okay, so is this really the last PlayStation console ever? Why, and how come, right? Uh, so according to Kota Izawa, right, an analyst at Citigroup, he says, we do think that the PS5 will be the last console, right? Games will likely be played entirely online for PlayStation 6. Now, what do you mean by that? What does it mean, right? Like, what's happening? Like, what is going on, right? Tell me what's going on. So here's news for you if you haven't already heard, right? Uh, the big bucks are in the games, not the device, right? So essentially, the money is actually made from selling access to games, or things that virtual items that you can sell in games, or virtual credits that you pay for in games. But the bulk of the margin isn't made, right, from the game consoles, right? So there isn't a lot of profit to be made in the game consoles. I mean, there's still profit, don't get me wrong, but there are much fatter and more attractive margins that are made through the games, right? So obviously, the industry players have long realized the big opportunity in gaming, right, is not in the device, right, but in the game itself. So I've just got a few notes. I won't read them all, but essentially, EA, right? For example, they make 52% of its revenue from live services, right? That includes sales of in-game content and currencies. So as I said, if you like, think of virtual currencies, right? But these are currencies within the game that you can spend, right? Roblox is another popular game that is played, right? Amongst school kids, teenagers. They sold $1.2 billion of virtual currencies in the first 9 months of this year. That is insane. That's a lot of money. And then, obviously that's great revenue for the gaming company, right? Okay, so from 2013 to 2020, right, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft sold about 230 million consoles. And you think about it, wow, that's a lot of consoles, right? So if you can see here, so you've got the PlayStation 4, right? That's from Sony. Then you have Nintendo, right? Nintendo Wii, right? You have the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 3, right? But essentially, all three combined, right, in totality, they sold about 230 million consoles. Now, to give you context, right? That's roughly how many iPhones are sold in 1 year. So each year, Apple comes out with a new model, right? A new iPhone model, or several new iPhone models. So that's roughly how many iPhones are sold in a year, right? So in 7 years, these three large companies, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft, sold 230 units of their gaming consoles, whereas each year, right, every single year, about the same number of iPhones get sold. So that gives you context, like that it's not exactly a profitable endeavor, right? Let's just put this into context. So the iPhone is obviously the best selling gaming console of all time, right? If you think about it, there are 1 billion iPhones out there, right? We call that the installed base, right? And there's and there's more than 200 million consoles out there, right? So obviously, so mobile devices have vastly outsold PlayStations and Xboxes. So if you really think about it, there are more people with phones, and before the lockdown, right, and before, when I used to take a lot of public transport, while you're waiting for the train or the bus, right, you see people on their phones, on their mobile phones, and they're playing games. While you're on the train or on the bus, you see people also, with the headphones on, and they're playing the games, right? And some of the games look pretty cool. You will sometimes find like a group of friends, right, who are huddled together, and they're playing like an interactive game, right? And all three of them are playing together as a team. So you always have your mobile phone with you, right? So if you think about it, because of the rise of mobile phones, right, it has just created this new platform, this new industry for mobile games, right? So that, making HTC, Nokia, Huawei, and Apple console players, console players in their own right. In fact, with 1 billion units, the iPhone is considered the single biggest gaming console in terms of active units. Right. Now, here's a chart of public companies, right? And their video game revenues, right, from Q1 to Q3 of last year. Here's the interesting thing, right? The world's largest gaming company doesn't have any consoles. They don't make or sell any consoles. If you can't see, that's actually Tencent, right? That's 15.2 billion dollars, right, for 3 quarters of last year, right? They have no consoles to sell you, right? They don't make consoles, but they dominate the development industry. I mean, the game development industry, right? Tencent also has stakes in, the Supercell, Epic Games. Epic Games is the one who did Fortnite, and Garena, right? So there are it's got ownership, right, in companies, or these gaming companies, of some of the most popular games around the world. Now, can you see the highlighted bits in blue here? So you have Apple and you have Google, and you're like, well, hang on. Since when did Apple and Google, make games? When? Since when? Because I don't remember. Well, I mean, I do know that now they do have an Apple Arcade, right, which you can play games using the Apple TV as well. But think of it this way, right? So because almost every phone out there is either an Apple device or a Google device, right? They serve as the gatekeepers to billions of devices, right? Whether it be, a mobile phone, or it could be a tablet, right? And they charge. Well, I know Apple charges about 30% for anything and everything that is sold on their app store. 30% is quite a huge chunk. It's 1/3, right? So 1/3 of everything that you sell goes to Apple, right? Explains why they're so cash rich as well. So they don't make any games, right? But they have a platform that kind of tolls you, right? Like, so you get charged 30, a third of your sales revenue, right, from selling stuff on the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, right? So so it's interesting. Apple's the third largest, and Google is the fifth largest in terms of revenue for games. Now that's very interesting. Now think about this, right? Because almost everyone on this planet, right, has a mobile phone. That means that mobile games will reach a far, far, far bigger audience than consoles would, right? So it's just, look, it's in your hand. You're bored, or you're stressed, and you want to take your mind off, the stress. You might, bring on a game and start playing it, right? Now there are 2.7 billion Android phones out there, and there's 1 billion Apple iPhones out there, right? And there's it's over 200 million gaming consoles out there. So combined, the mobile platforms are way, 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 way bigger. Okay, so let's go into a little short history of gaming. Right. So in the 1970s, you had arcades. So remember those arcades? Well, you still have those arcades. I remember, when I was little, I love going to the arcades. Right. You change your money, you get your tokens, and then you stick it in, and I could spend my whole day there. Right. And it was cool, right? And my favorite game when I was young, was Street Fighter 2, right? So those of you who are out there who are Street Fighter 2 fans, right? Let me know. Like and my favorite character was always Guile, right? Yeah. So in the in the 1970s, right? The It was one device, one game, right? Pay per use. Or you put money into the machine, and then you played at the arcade. It was fun, right? It was a fun day out. Then in the 80s, PCs and consoles emerged, right? And they became more affordable. You could actually pay a few $1,000s. And this was the rise of the PCs, the rise of the personal computers, and also the gaming consoles. Now, for those of you who are old enough, you will remember this Atari, right? Atari is actually making a bit of a comeback, sort of, right? Yeah, and then so in the 80s you had these dedicated gaming devices, right? You'd pay a lot for it, right? You buy it once, but you can play it as many times as you want to, right? You could buy a console and you could play it at home for as long as you want to. But obviously, there are slightly different experiences, right? To playing on a gaming console at home in front of your TV to actually going to the arcade, right? Slightly different experiences. So from 2000 onwards, computers reached the mainstream, right? So PCs crossed the 100 million annual sales mark, right, in 1999. So 1999 is roughly here, right? So 1999, right, there were more than 100 million annual sales, right? So by 2005, there were 200 million gamers. Sorry, this was 1999, right? So by 2005, there were 200 million gamers. From 2007 onwards, right, the first smartphone was introduced, the Apple iPhone, right? Steve Jobs presented it. I watched it. I didn't think much of it at that time because I was still having my Nokia E71, and I was quite proud of it because it had the cool keyboard and stuff. But eventually, what Steve Jobs had introduced to the world, right? Obviously, it was a smartphone. It became, right, that next platform for gaming, right? So initially, you had the arcades, then you evolved to playing it at home, right? You could play more games at home, and then PC sales really shot up. And then in 2007 the iPhone was introduced. It was all in one, right? And so some new business models came about through that, right? So there were the free to play, right? Essentially, you just download a game and you play the game, and it's fun, right? You download it, it's free. But after a while, a lot of these games had in-app purchases, so you had to pay for these games eventually, right? But essentially, you could download a whole bunch of games that were free. Now, how many? Okay, look, I'm going to stop here for a little while, right? I'm just asking the audience, how many of you actually had, I don't know, an Atari or a Nintendo back then, right? Or like, how many have you actually played games? How many gamers are there out there, right? In the audience, I'm just interested. I'm curious. If you are, just put your hands up, wave for something, and say that that you're a gamer. So from 2011 onwards, right? Um, what they put into it. Now, I remember when I was playing games, right? Before 2011, I would get all excited playing World of Warcraft, but then I would get even, well, those days they were called LAN parties, right? So you would bring your PC to your friend's house and whatnot, and you'd set it up and you'd play World of Warcraft and you challenge each other, or spacecraft or whatever, or even what was the other one, the Age of Empires, right? I'm kind of telling you how old I am, but those, like, we would get really excited. Yeah, Aaron. Aaron's a gamer. We've got a gamer watching us. Well, welcome, Aaron. Yeah. So those were the, like you would get really excited because you could connect. We could connect our computers onto the local area network, right, and network it and actually play with each other. But then the internet came, and you're like, well, hang on. Well, now you can play games against anyone within your region, not only on the same network, right? But it could be a different country, right? Could be in a different continent. Old school gamer, right? So that's that social aspect of gaming started evolving, right? It was gaming became more of a social experience now, right? It started changing. I've always been a big believer that technology actually changes lives, right? It changes our lifestyles, it changes the way we live. It just sometimes for the better, and sometimes not so good. But whatever it is, technology will always change the way we live. That's why you see that from one generation to the next, right? They grew up with different types of technologies, and therefore, that's why sometimes their views don't match, right? Like sometimes the grandparents, and then the parents, and then the kids, right? They all grew up with different technological innovations that were introduced into their lifetimes, right? So yeah. So anyway, by 2011, right, the gaming evolved into a more of a social experience, right? Now, so just some notes here, right? 2014, the industry revenue crossed 100 billion a year. Now, by the way, the gaming industry is even bigger than Hollywood, right? Um, Yuan Tong used to play games. Yeah, yeah, me too. I used to play games. I don't really play any games these days, but just too busy, right? But look, it was fun, right? Like playing games is fun. It's all part of growing up. And then in 2019, gamers totaled 2.7 billion. So last year, as of last year, there's 2.7 billion gamers, and revenue crossed 160 billion, right? So that's a 60% increase in terms of revenue in 5 years. That's right, Aaron. The gaming industry is huge, right? And there's a lot of money, right? So in a quick 5 years, right, the revenue within the gaming industry went up 60%. So that is amazing, right? Aaron's got a very good comment here, which I'm gonna just put up on the screen, right? So Aaron says, you look at how they distribute the games, right? It's much faster, more efficient, right, than movies and other entertainment combined. So that's right, that's right. I mean, and like I was talking about the mobile platforms these days, right? And hence, how non-gaming platforms are getting gaming revenue, like Apple and Google. So yeah, so this is huge, right? So now, big tech has entered the chat. Has entered the chat. Now, who is big tech? Well, big tech, right? We all know about big tech, Fang and the likes, right? So, big tech competes to be, right, the Netflix of gaming. Now, what does that even mean, right? So I've got some screenshots here. You have so Google has introduced the Stadia, right? Google Stadia. Then you've got Amazon, right? Facebook, right? I still remember playing when I first got onto Facebook. Oh, I can't remember, 2007 maybe, right? And then I think a really popular game back then was Farmville. I don't know if everybody's old enough to remember Farmville. Yeah, I used to play Farmville on Facebook. Yeah, so now big tech, right, is thinking of coming in. They're ready, right? They want to get into this gaming industry. Why? Well, look at the growth, right? They grew 60% in revenue in a short 5 years, and there's a lot of money, right? Now, do you guys see the picture on the far right? Right, Ready Player One. How many of you have actually watched this? Have watched this movie? All right. For those of you who have not watched it, spoiler alert, cover your ears now, right? But it brings home the point about gaming evolving into being a social experience, social experience, right? Because okay, so cover your ears if you haven't watched the show, right? Yeah, cover your ears if you haven't watched the show. This is going to be a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Right, so it's about so the world is now controlled by these large corporations and large what do you call large gaming corporations, right? And they make cool games, and then you're into these 3D games, right? You put on your thing, and you've got your suit and all that, and you go into this virtual world, and that's where you meet your friends, right? You hang out. Your avatar is whoever you want, however you configure your avatar to be. And then you go in, you play games, and then you just chill and hang with your friends. And you've never met your friends before, right? They could be living from down the street, or in the next road, or it could be from a different country, right? But then you don't really know who they are. You only know them by their avatar and their avatar names. But it becomes a very social. It's a very social experience, gaming, right? Now, so the game industry is transforming, right, from a device centric era to a player centric era, powered by new technology that provides the freedom to play with friends anywhere on any device, right? That's kind of what it's moving to now. If you think about this isn't just gaming, right? Essentially, the whole world is moving to the cloud, right? I know a lot of corporations are still battling with it, but essentially going cloud native, right, is the natural way to go, right? We have good broadband, we have good infrastructure, we have 5G that's being rolled out, right? So essentially, right, you become device agnostic, right? I mean, for all you know, it could be a watch that you play your game on, right? It could be your phone, it could be your iPad, or you could be on your laptop, right, or your desktop. It doesn't matter where you are, but essentially it's the same game that you can play, right? That's kind of where it's moving towards. So it says here, we see Amazon and Google as the main competitors going forward. Right now, this is from Phil Spencer. He's Microsoft's head of games business, and a direct report to Satya Nadella, the CEO, right? So it says they see Amazon and Google as the main competitors going forward, right? And he says that's not to disrespect Nintendo and Sony, but the traditional gaming companies are somewhat out of position. Now, what do they mean by that? He says, I guess they could try to recreate Azure, but we've invested tens of billions of dollars in cloud, right, over the years. So what else? So what do Microsoft, Amazon, and Google have in common? They all provide cloud services. They're the three mega cloud service providers, right? Amazon being the largest, right? The Amazon AWS. Then you have Microsoft Azure, and the newest kid on the block is Google, right? But Google has also committed to spending at least $20 billion, right, to beef up their cloud services. And in fact, we see Google being very innovative and very quick in what they do. So I see some of in the comments, some of you guys have actually watched Ready Player One. It's a cool movie. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was cool. I don't know if I look forward to a world like that, but it would be cool to just put on your your VR goggles and go into, like, have this immersive gaming. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so this is an interesting comment from Aaron, right? Aaron says cloud services with huge chunks of customer base, right? Correct. Network effect. Okay, so essentially, so what Phil is saying is that, hey, look, no disrespect to all the old school. When I say old school, right? Like Nintendo and Sony there, but because these are considered traditional gaming companies, but they where they lack, right, I guess we're talking about going to the cloud, right? So being cloud native, cloud centric. So okay, so what is big tech's gaming growth strategy? They want to convert all the 4 billion mobile users and counting, right, and increasing, into gamers. So IDC expects 1.2 billion smartphone sales this year, right? This year alone. So there's nearly an installed base, right, combined of Android and iOS users, of 4 billion, of a 4 billion installed base, right, on all platforms globally. And then there are 2.7 billion gamers on all platforms globally. So these are huge numbers. These are big numbers. I mean, especially if you're a business, right, and you're trying to figure out, well, hang on, should I sell consoles, right, or do I do games, and what is that strategy, right? So if you think about it, this is quite a uh, it's the logical thing to do, right? It's a logical thing to do. So Phil goes on to say, I do not want to be in a fight over format wars with those guys, while Amazon and Google are focusing on how to get gaming to 7 billion people around the world. Ultimately, that's the goal. Ultimately, they just want to get everyone on earth, right, to play games. And it would be no small feat to build the kind of infrastructure to support gaming for 7 billion people, right? And who are the best people who are most well equipped and have the experience to do that? So you've got the three large providers. You have Amazon, you have Microsoft, you have Google, and in this region you have Ali Cloud as well, right? They're also a very large player and an experienced player. And it's actually quite amazing, the systems in China. Can you imagine the scale of catering to the population of China, right? So it's huge. Okay. So another good comment from Aaron. I'm going to share this here, right? So cloud centric, right, means that they need a good cloud framework, right? Demand for good server storage. Yep. Yep. Suppliers. Yeah. Right. So thanks for sharing, Aaron. Okay. Okay. So JP Low has a question. Any connection between the big tech gaming strategy to say LTC? Look, I think so that's why remember when we had that session and we had David Schwartz come on to talk about the game that was launched on the Litecoin network. That's interesting, right? So now that you see the numbers of gamers out there, but obviously this game only works on this one, the Litecoin game only works. It's called Lightbringer. It's an installed game though, and that one has to be installed on a Windows machine. You can't even install it on the Mac. They could be working on one. I guess the strategy, to put that on the Litecoin blockchain, probably is to target this huge group of gamers, right? So it's your potential market, right? That's a potential market segment if you look at it as a business. So yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So gaming is now all about infrastructure, right? Do you have the infrastructure to support all the gamers when there's a surge, right? When there's a surge of demand for a specific game, right? So Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, right? They're often referred to as the hyperscalers, right? When you talk about scaling, right? These are like the masters, well, including Ali Cloud. Right? Why? Because they have the infrastructure and they also have the expertise, right, to deliver cloud and web services to millions. Now, that being said, I think the YouTube was down this week. It was down on Monday or Tuesday. I remember even some of the Google services were down. So look, even these guys, right? They're huge, but anything can go wrong. But they make it their job to make sure that they have enough infrastructure in place so that it does not go down. And sometimes when it goes down, it may not entirely be their fault, because it's like a series of interconnected pipes and joints, right? So you don't know where things go wrong sometimes. So if you look at the market share of the leading cloud infrastructure service providers, you see that Amazon is the AWS is by far the largest, right? They have 1/3 of the market, right? And Azure, then Google, and then Ali Cloud, right? Then you've got the other clouds. Okay, now, okay, so how cloud gaming, right, could widen gaming markets, right? So think of this, right? So you've got high end immersive gaming experiences, right? Um, that can be delivered to those who can only afford high-end devices, right? But when you play a game that is cloud-based, right, that is cloud native, the processing, the heavy lifting, right, actually occurs on the server, right? And it streams through, just like how we are streaming to you live, right? Um, the heavy, the heavy lifting is not done on my laptop that I'm streaming to you from, but it's actually the heavy lifting is done on the cloud server, and then it is streamed to all of you here, right? So, when you do cloud gaming or cloud native style gaming, right? Um, the heavy lifting is done on the cloud server, and then it is then sent, right, it is then stream, right, to the local device, which can then send back commands, right, based on where you move your thumbs and where you click fire and all that. So essentially what's happening here is, if you think about it, when you have, for example, when you have, say, the Sony PlayStation console, all that processing, right, all that heavy lifting is happening here. That's why they needed to have the discs to store the graphics. They store the videos and everything locally. But now, right, we have pretty robust and pretty strong cloud infrastructure, right? And we have good communications infrastructure, right? All the, a lot of the undersea cables have been laid, right? The whole planet is connected. And, telcos around the world are rolling out 5G. Right now, here's another application for 5G. Right, for those out there who think that 5G isn't going to have a massive impact, think of the high quality, I don't know, 8K video games that you can play. Right, once you get 5G rolled out. So yeah, so that basically means that you won't need a custom gaming rig, right, to play fantastic games. Right, you just need really fast internet, and very low latency, right? So that you can like everything that you do, it's just sent up and down, and you will see, right? Even internet service providers. So I'm with Time, and if you go to the Times, time.com's website, they have really high end dedicated gaming routers, right, for those gamers out there. So I think right now the highest end that you can buy is the Asus ROG, stands for Republic of Gamers, AX 11000, right? That router is a beast, right? For all you gamers out there, that router is a beast. It's I think it's the highest end one that they sell. It's just it looks like an alien ship, right, with 8 antennas hanging out of it. It's really cool. Okay, so it says, look, games that once could only live on high-end devices, right, like the Xbox or the iPhone, right, you'll be able to play them on practically any device, on any form factor, right, that doesn't have to be very high-end, right, because all that heavy processing is done on the server. Okay, so far Microsoft is winning the cloud gaming wars. So you can see, right? You can play it on the Xbox, right? You can play it on the PC. I think that's another Xbox, right? Oh wait, no, maybe that's the PlayStation. No, Xbox. Through a Game Pass, right? So, so besides the Xbox game studios, the company also owns many major game studios, including ZeniMax, which it recently acquired. Microsoft also has a deal with EA, Electronic Arts, which gives Game Pass members access to EA titles. So that's cool. Right, so they basically have an Xbox gaming subscription service called the Game Pass, right? And that's how Microsoft plans to offer cloud gaming, right? And now they already have 15 million members, right? That's more than any other gaming rivals out there, right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so Aaron has another comment here, right? They just keep making the users, getting them to stay within the ecosystem. Yeah, look, that's pretty clever, because that's that's the same strategy that Apple uses, right? Like once you got an iPhone, you need an iPad, then you need an Apple Watch, right? And then you just stuck. You're stuck in that ecosystem. Yeah. But Aaron, what I would like to see is a more open gaming experience, right? Like right now, it's like camps, right? You got this camp, and obviously because it's for profit. But what I would like to see, and I did this in one of the previous episodes, is if within the games, it's going to involve currency of any type, it would be cool to have some sort of open currency so that the currency that you earn or whatever within a game is transportable to another game, right? So if like the Litecoin, the Lightbringer, that's actually real money, right? It's Litecoin. If for example, all the games or the game developers said, okay, we will stick to Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever the cryptos are. So these currencies within the games are transportable, right? Onto each game. That would be really cool, right? So so Microsoft has partnered with Sony, right, and Samsung to explore the cloud gaming opportunities. So yeah, and so that's Satya there with Samsung. But Google's efforts should not be taken lightly, right? So Google also wants to defend its YouTube turf from Amazon, right? Which owns Twitch. Did you know that there are actually more viewers on Twitch than there are Netflix subscribers? Yes, true story. Actually, there's also more Twitch streamers than YouTube streamers, right? So so fun fact, right? Amazon actually owns Twitch. I had no idea. So like right now, you could be watching us. You could be tuning in from Twitch, or you could be tuning in from YouTube or Facebook, right? So we're live streaming to all three platforms right now. Okay, so look, by one estimate, 1/3 of all YouTube content is actually gaming related. Right, 1/3, so 33% of all YouTube content is gaming related, right? At a $200+ billion valuation, YouTube is one of Google's prized assets, and Twitch is eating into its market share. So Google's not happy, right? So initially when we started live streaming this year, we were live streaming on Facebook only at first, then Facebook and YouTube, and then eventually we added Twitch onto it as well. So yeah, it's definitely growing, right? So so Google's been developing its cloud gaming services for years, right? And hopes that YouTube Link and cloud services to drive will link to its cloud services to drive the Stadia adoption, right? Ex Sony gaming execs are actually running Stadia, right? So another fun fact: Stadia is expecting to have 400 new games from 200 developers from next year onwards, right? So stay tuned. This should be interesting, right? Now, who will win the cloud gaming wars? Well, this is interesting. Well, what could potentially happen is that we'll end up with several competing game streaming services with a few big winners, right? So if you to make comparison, right, we've got up here a graph that looks at the video streamers, right? So we're looking at you've got Amazon Prime. Well, obviously Netflix is a clear winner here, right? They're also part of the FANG, right? You've got Amazon Prime, right? Amazon Prime. HBO is a new entrant, and Hulu, right? Hulu's been around. So yeah, so you may end up in a similar position, right, for the cloud gaming wars. Now, here's something. Now, again, to give context, right? Here's something that's more important to consider, right? Is the fact that we are still extremely early in cloud gaming, just like we are in crypto, right? Extremely early days, right? And that's what the future proof is all about, right? You're here to learn about the future, or you're here to hear about, trends and make your predictions for the future. Now, the total number of gamers are 2.7 billion, right? Uh, cloud gaming users are only 20 million right now, right? So it's huge potential, right? We're so early. We are so early. And all you budding, game developers out there, hey, guess what? Opportunity, right? Green fields. Yep. All right. So if you look at just again to give context, right? So when in Q3 of 2011, right? Um, so that number 20 million here, yeah. So that's where it was for Netflix, right? That's 20 million right there, right? And that's 2011, so it's 9 years ago. And look at how it's grown, right? So there's huge potential, right? Okay. Now, as this cloud gaming industry explodes, one company, right, is primed to profit. And here's where it gets interesting, right? AMD. Now, anyone know of AMD? Anybody know Intel? Yeah, Intel is what powers the PCs and all that, and it's also what does not power the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro anymore. Well, for the higher end, it does, but Intel, right, is a microchip processor manufacturer, and so AMD is also a microprocessor manufacturer, right? So we think that AMD is quite well positioned, right, to win from the shift to cloud computing or cloud gaming, right? Because what it does is it's got semi custom chips, right, that actually power Sony's PlayStation, Microsoft's Xbox, right? These are powered by AMD processors, right? The Xbox gaming cloud gaming service, right, basically involves devices connecting to Xbox hardware, right? But they're in server blades, right? That's housed in the Microsoft data centers, right? In the Azure data centers, right? So the same concept is being used for PlayStations now, right? Sony's cloud gaming service. So essentially, effectively, instead of having the console in each of your homes, right? They stick them into the data center, right? Again, I talk about this cloud native uh, uh, computing, right? So that's it's a very clear trend that's happening here. So AMD has also developed semi-custom chips, right? GPUs for Google to power the Stadia cloud gaming service, right? Now look at this chart, right? So this is the rally, right? So during a presentation by Google, right, when Google was talking about the Stadia, right, that was around 10 a.m., right? So that was around 10 a.m. By 1 p.m., right, the share price of AMD had gone up almost 12%. Right, within the span of a few hours, it went up almost 12%. Whilst the presentation began, and they were talking about the Stadia, right, and how AMD's chips were gonna power it. Right, this is really interesting. Aaron has shared a comment. I'll just put it on the screen to share. Right, with his cloud gaming business model, will be very likely very similar to Microsoft Office back in the 1990s. Distribution get the heavy lifting done. Profit margin close to 56 million with minimal variable costs and additional number of games sold with limited fixed costs. I guess it's probably more similar to Google, right? Your Google Docs, your Google, right now they call it Microsoft Workspace, right? It's more similar to that because it's more cloud native, right? And essentially, or effectively, similar profit margins, right? If not more, but everything is controlled at HQ, right? Or controlled at the data centers. Okay, now where were we? Okay, so back to the presentation, right? Okay, so AMD at the right place at the right time, right? AMD's chips will likely be powering cloud gaming services for 4 of the 10 biggest publicly listed gaming companies by revenue, right? So you have Sony, right? You have Microsoft, you have Google, and you have EA, right? So these would be the four, right? Consoles are segmented under AMD semi-customs division and are considered a key AMD profit engine, right? EA has yet to announce its own cloud streaming service, but has signed up to be part of the Xbox Game Pass offering, right? So as mentioned before. So cloud can beat the scalpers. I mean, just consider this right now. Remember when we said that at the beginning of the presentation, we said that there were how many bots, that scalping bots that tried to purchase the Sony PlayStation 5, right? This was a rant from one of the gamers, a disappointed gamer who wanted to purchase the Sony PlayStation 5. And he says, fans are unhappy since we can't even get a PS5, right? Which has been out of stock since November, and we'll have to wait until February, right? This is a launch disaster. Not going to spend more than the retail price to get a PS5 before then, right? Scalpers can keep them, right? So this guy's pretty angry, right? But if there are no more consoles to be sold, right, and you can play your game off your mobile device, right? Then essentially bye scalpers, right? Because all the hardware will be at the data centers, right? Essentially all the PS5s and all the Xboxes, they will all be in the data centers. Excuse me, I'm gonna have a drink. Okay. Now, so we bring in another company, right? Another chip maker called NVIDIA, also one of the FANGs. So why aren't NVIDIA chips used to power the PS5 or Xbox? Look, this all looks really complex, but a long story short, the requirement for an x86 base SoC, so system on the chip, is what was demanded by Sony, and what was demanded by Microsoft. AMD was willing to play ball. NVIDIA said no, right? So what AMD did was, so according to Patrick Moorhead, the AMD built an entire product division to build and support the custom chips for the gaming console business, right? So something that none of its rivals were willing to commit to, and that was how NVIDIA, right, did not or is not powering the PS5, the PlayStation, or the Xbox, right? It was because AMD saw that as an opportunity. They saw that as a new branch of business, and they dedicated resources to supporting that business. Now, here's an interesting one, right? You can see the AMD versus the Intel CPU market share, right? So when the PS4 was announced, AMD was facing some serious financial challenges, right? Having run into capacity issues. So AMD posted losses in all 4 years, from 2012 to 2015. Now, if you know, at some point, well, not at some point, they were rivals of Intel, right? Because Intel produced microprocessors, but so did AMD. However, it was more of a capacity issue, and I still remember this because so AMD lost out because they just weren't big enough. They didn't have the capacity to meet the demands, whereas Intel did, right? Intel could churn out those chips and meet demand. So essentially, its stock price fell, right? Fell from 540 to 290, right, during the same period. And AMD was actually targeted for by distressed asset investors, right? They wanted to come in, tear everything apart, sell it, and take and profit from that. So now this was because it lost. It was partly due to how it lost market share to Intel, right, in the CPU market. So you can see very clearly, right? The blue is Intel and the red is AMD. You could see it going up, their market share going up, whilst the AMD market share was, went down. So PS4, Xbox, right? was key, right? They've been key to AMD's dramatic turnaround. Look at that turnaround, right? So again, blue is Intel, and red is AMD, right? So the 8-core semi-custom system on a chip, the SoC, right, that AMD designed for the console was AMD's very first foray into the world of designing a custom chip, right? And by winning the PlayStation and the Xbox business, that was key, right, for AMD to raise cash to develop their new Ryzen CPUs for PCs, right, and Epic CPUs for data centers, right, to then regain its market share, right? See how they lost their market share, and then yeah, to regain the market share. Okay, so AMD is Intel's nemesis, and it's catching up, right? And AMD had also outsourced, right, its chip making process to TSMC, which also supplies Nvidia. It also supplies Apple, right? And so AMD, Apple, and Nvidia, they design their own chips, right? Then TSMC essentially makes it for all of them, right? So TSMC has, I guess, the process down pat. They have the capacity, the capabilities. They have the ability to actually churn out those chips, right? In large amounts. So in the meantime, so Intel, right? Intel makes their own chips, right? They've got their processing lines and all that. They ran into issues with their manufacturing process, right? So that caused them to lose market share in the PC market, right, and in the data center market. So it's interesting, right? So both Intel and AMD, they were started between 1968 and 1969. By former employees of Fairchild Semiconductor. So essentially, they came from the same company, and both were formed, right? So I'll just move on. So look, at a market cap of 110 billion, AMD is still half the size of Intel, right? It's longtime rival. So Intel is huge, right? But Intel is slowly losing market share. In fact, they have lost the market share for all Apple devices. Obviously, Apple, they did an excellent job with the M1 chip, of which they're moving away from Intel chips because Intel could not keep up with Apple's demands, right? So but in the past 5 years, right, AMD's shares are up 3,700%. 5 years. 3,700%. That's a 37x. Not bad at all, right? It's definitely a turnaround company. Intel's was up 49%, right, about 50%, and AMD, achieved a 37x, right? So that's pretty amazing. So AMD's share price has given it the firepower to buy Xilinx. Now Xilinx is it's got a $36 billion market cap, which you can see AMD further close its gap with Intel. Now Xilinx is known for manufacturing or producing FPGAs, right? Another type of chip, right? Okay. So in 2019, AMD partnered with Samsung, right, in a deal that will see its Radeon GPU technology powering future Samsung mobile chips, right? So given the fact that mobile devices are now the de facto gaming consoles, right? You can just play on your phone. The deal with Samsung is good news for AMD's push into cross-platform gaming, right? Now AMD, so essentially AMD will license the custom graphics IP based on the recently announced highly scalable RDNA graphics architecture to Samsung for use in their mobile devices, right, including smartphones and other products that complement the AMD product offering. Samsung will then pay AMD technology license fees, and royalties. Qualcomm is so Qualcomm is the world's largest supplier of mobile chips with a 29% market share, with Samsung and Apple having 13% each. Right. So just to give you the lay of the land. Okay, so I've talked a lot about, I talked about AMD, I talked about Nvidia, I talked about Intel, right? So essentially, AMD, right, arch rivals with Intel on the processor front, on the CPU front, right? So whilst Intel produces the i9s, the i7s, right, the microprocessor, the front that AMD is competing with them on is the Ryzen chips, right? And then on the graphics side of things, right, AMD has the Radeon graphics chips, and they compete against the NVIDIA GeForce, right? They're battling two fronts, right? So on the graphics, on the GPUs, they're competitors with NVIDIA, and on the microprocessors, they are competitors with Intel. Okay, so where does NVIDIA, right, AMD's arch rival in GPUs, stand in cloud gaming? Are they even involved in cloud gaming? Now, Nvidia seems to be very keen, right, to push its own cloud gaming service. It's called GeForce Now, right? Now, this is interesting as you watch these companies evolve, right? Now, at first they were just hardware manufacturers, right? But now they're evolving into cloud services, right? They're evolving and they're transitioning their business model, right, from a hardware manufacturer and provider, right, into a software play, right? So this is interesting. So NVIDIA was founded in 1993, right, by CPU designers from AMD and Sun Microsystems. So NVIDIA's CEO is Jensen Huang, right? He was a chip designer at AMD. Now, despite its prominence in GPU-enabled gaming and gaming technologies, NVIDIA has little to show in terms of cloud gaming related partnerships with big tech companies. Right. So essentially, you've got NVIDIA, who's a GPU manufacturer, right, and selling a lot of it, especially during the I think 2016 and 17, and before that, when mining and crypto mining was a thing, right? People were mining Ethereum. Yeah, so a lot of these were sold to do that. Sorry, I digress. But so we've seen little about custom chips designed by specifically for gaming clients. Amazon's Luna service uses NVIDIA's chips, but they have not been custom made for Luna, right? So they're just stock standard. Um, Recall we mentioned earlier that AMD developed custom chips for PlayStation and Xbox, right? But NVIDIA was less willing to do so, right? Okay. Now, NVIDIA's GeForce Now, right, actually has 5 million users. So that makes them the second largest cloud gaming platform. The second largest. But again, right, if I were to go back to this, give you context. So there you go, cloud gaming. That little dot there is cloud gaming, right? So there is still opportunity for growth. There you go. Yep. So some of the major developers like Warner Brothers and Xbox Game Studios, they've actually pulled out from GeForce Now, right? But Nvidia's managed to bring in guys like the Bandai Namco, it's a top 10 game company, as well as Ubisoft and Valve, right? Valve is the developer of Counter-Strike and Half-Life, right? So Nvidia might want to be the next big tech. They also recently purchased ARM, right? ARM is a company in the UK that makes those. Well, they have the licensing for the designs of the RISC chips, right? They recently bought that. So Nvidia will be. So they're probably aiming to be the next big tech, right? So as at 2018, Nvidia had more software engineers than hardware engineers. That's interesting, right? Um, so they're touting a software-driven partnerships with companies like VMware and Mercedes, right, which will use NVIDIA tech in every car starting 2024, right? Um, now, here's the insight, right? The company's operating margins, which is around 26%, right? They're more comparable to a software company like Adobe at around 33% margins, right? Than it is to AMD, because AMD's margins are only 11%. So obviously, it's quite known, right, that because of the loss of diminishing returns, if you just Google that, right, loss of diminishing returns, software, when you sell software, right, so software companies usually have higher margins compared to hardware, because there's every unit cost, there's a variable cost attached to it. I'm oversimplifying, of course, but so the CEO Jensen Huang says, look, NVIDIA is a software-defined company today, right? With rich software contents like GeForce Now, NVIDIA Virtual Workstation in the cloud, NVIDIA AI, and NVIDIA Drive that will add recurring software revenue to our business model, right? So effectively, what they want to do is again to pivot and shift their business model to not only as a hardware manufacturer, but software as well, right? Now let's see. So at the bottom, you'll see that Nvidia, right? That in green, they've actually gone past Netflix, right? So their market cap is at what, 327 billion, was Netflix is at 230 billion, right? So yeah, they've gone the market cap's larger than Netflix, larger than Intel, definitely larger than AMD. Okay, I think I'm almost at the end. Okay, so why is big tech so interested in gaming and cloud gaming, right? Well, in 2019, so last year, Netflix said that its biggest threat rival was not HBO or Disney, but Epic Games, right? That's who Netflix is their biggest rival, right? Epic Games is the creator of Fortnite. All right. So while Fortnite began as a game, right, it is now a social network. Think of this. So by right, perhaps Facebook should be worried, right? So Fortnite, it is a game, right? It still is a game, but it's become a social network, right? People log into Fortnite to meet their friends, right? Social media, right? They play social games. They watch movies, right? Netflix, YouTube, Facebook, video, Instagram together, or just chat, right? Increasingly, it looks like the social media network of the future will be less of a website and more like a game. So I go back to that Ready Player One movie, right? That's pretty cool. Now on the lower right, you will see in this graph here. So this is a screen time graph, right? So screen time actually, kids play, right? So U.S. children's average free time hours per week, and what activities that they do. So screen time is screen-based play is the highest, right? Then indoor screen-free play, then outdoor play. But kids these days spend a lot of time in front of the screen. So it's they play a lot of games or they watch a lot of things, right? It is what it is, right? It is what it is. Okay, this is the second last slide, and we're almost done, right? So gaming is now a 500 billion plus opportunity, right? So that's $500 billion. How so, right? How so? So if you look at this, right? So Facebook's revenue, right, for its 2.5 billion users is currently sitting at $70 billion, right? So for Facebook, right, a 10% share of an 8.5 billion gaming user base could yield them an extra $50 billion, right? So it's more than half of its current. It'll be an increase of more than half of its current revenue, right? Now we're making some very, 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 very broad assumptions here, right? So the assumptions that we're making is, look, Okay, so here are some of the facts, right, to on the model. So 15 years ago, we had 200 gamers globally, right? Today we have 2.7 billion gamers, right here, right now. And that industry generates $160 billion a year, right, which we have established early on. So if everyone becomes a gamer, right, this industry will be worth $500 billion or more every year, right? Now, so Jensen Huang says, I've always believed that the video games market is going to be literally everyone, right? Literally everyone, from the young to the very old, right? So now we have 7.8 billion people, right? That number is expected to rise to 8.1 billion in 2025 and to 8.5 billion in 2030. So that's 9 years from now. 9 years from now is not a long time. So again, regardless of which cloud service wins outright, we think that key players in gaming infrastructure is the key here, uh, are, are poised to benefit. So the industry, this is the current industry, right? It's $160 billion, right? But the gaming industry revenue for 8.5 billion gamers, it's a $500 billion market, right? So this is going to be a huge market, right? Okay, so we've reached the end of the presentation. I hope you found it interesting, and I see a few gamers out there, right? I see you, Aaron. Aaron, you're a gamer. I know you've got I think you're quite a hardcore gamer, and then who else? Yuan Tong, yeah, you used to play, you gamer. Yeah, quite a few gamers out there, and thanks for the comments, right, and interaction. So as usual, right, if you had $1,000 and could only choose one of these companies to invest in, right? Which one would you choose? Nvidia or AMD or both? Right? Put in the comment section below. I'd be interested to find out. And I hope you found this presentation interesting. Hey Steven. Hey, Steven's here. Yeah, Steven's good. Nvidia shares has gone from 150 to nearly 530 in 1 year. Yeah, kind of like Tesla stocks, right? Tesla has gone up 6x this year as well. Aaron would go with Nvidia. Cool. Ken would go with AMD. All right, cool. All right, anyone else? Let us know your thoughts. All right, would you go AMD? Would you go Nvidia? Aaron says the founder has clear and laser focused mission to pursue. True. JP Low. So let's see. Alexander says Alex would buy Nvidia, AMD, and some Litecoin. JP Low would go for Nvidia. Interesting. So we've actually got two AMDs. The rest are Nvidias, and you've got Alex there with a bag of everything. Interesting, guys. Look, hey, thank you so much for tuning in and for staying right to the very end. This is this will be the last future proof for 2020. We will see you next year in 2021. Don't forget to tune in. Wait, let's see. So there's one more comment from Steven here. Buy $1,000 on AMD, borrow another 1,000 to buy Nvidia. Yeah, so we hope you've enjoyed this format, and we hope that you enjoy the content that we bring you. We work really hard behind the scenes. It might just be an hour show, right? But a lot of hard work goes into this. It's not just me; it's the whole team, right? To bring this to you. So yeah, look, I also want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who has, worked their butts off, right? To bring this to you every night. Thank you, JP. Thanks. Yeah, so wishing everyone out there who celebrates Christmas a Merry Christmas, a safe Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Have a great start to 2021, and hopefully we will eradicate this virus problem by next year, right? Yeah, look, thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the content and continue to enjoy the content. Again, Future Proof is what we bring to you every week, right? We will. Yeah, thanks, KP Chin. So we hope to continue to bring you good content We will try to bring in, speakers and bring in guests from within the industry, right? Thank you, Ken. Thanks. Glad you guys appreciate the content. Yeah, look, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, like spread the love. Yes. Merry Christmas to you too. All right. So everyone, have a great time off. Thank you, Alex. Bitcoin to 500K. Thanks, Chiching. All right. Okay, so everyone, have a great year end, right? And stay safe. Stay safe out there. And we will see you next year. Okay. Bye-bye.